So this is obviously part 2, and we're still looking at tools and skills to navigate the complexity and ambiguity of this wonderful human experience. My name's Jo Swann. You can find out more about me at my website. And for anyone new here, so when someone says, "What do?" I say I'm a co-pilot. I teach people skills and provide tools to help them navigate this human experience until they realize that actually they don't need me, which is great. What they're actually searching for all along, we all have it. We just need to locate it because it's obscured from view. If you want to, I've actually added my Instagram handle on there because I'm actually quite active on Instagram. So if you're using tools and you want to tag me or you want to ask me any questions, I do look at that every day. That's probably where I'm most active on Instagram. Okay, I would like to refresh part 1 because I know it was pretty heavy going. So stick with me. We're going to build on it, and I feel that this part 2 is a little bit easier to digest. So revisiting part 1, we have our limited senses, and this is how we experience the world as human beings. And because these senses are only 5 to 10 of the more than 50 that are available in living organisms, this creates the illusion of separation and limitation within us. When you mix this with the instinctual biological wiring that we spoke about, those 5 instincts that reside in the subconscious, that's when we start to construct these mental prisons. We adapt in these subconscious mental prisons by developing coping mechanisms. Some of them are positively adaptive, but a lot of them are maladaptive. When you blend this mental prison with life experiences and trauma, that's when we generate these subconscious, limiting, destructive, sabotaging beliefs. And often they can just run on autopilot. Okay, the subconscious power, it's 220 times more powerful than the conscious mind. And that drives 95% of behavior. Do you remember last week we said 50 to 60 bits per second of conscious power compared to 11 million of subconscious? So it's way more powerful and just under the level of conscious awareness. Willpower has its limits, so does determination, and so does motivation. You know, all those things live in the conscious mind. So true transformation requires working with the subconscious, not just conscious effort. The awareness anchor was our tool to expand and shift perspective. This is a calm and comforting place, and it is a place where we can start to create distance from these thoughts, feelings, and sensations, a place from which we can experience them through. And, you know, I think, Vin, you said that it was actually it was kind of spiritual, and it can be very much so for some people. But if you're not spiritual, then it's still a very powerful experience, because that's what we're doing. We're taking a step back and we're observing our thoughts and our feelings and our sensations. We're not entangled with them. So whether you want it to be spiritual or experiential, very powerful. And your true nature is infinite, and you have everything you need to live a fulfilled life. Okay, now this is another sentence that I tell myself. I tell the people that I work with, I tell my family, I tell my friends, and I truly believe it. It's that life will present the answers to your problems. Meanwhile, we need tools and we need skills to navigate the challenges whilst life is working things out. And this kind of speaks to that phrase, this too will pass. You find that you can be just having a really awful time, a terrible day, you're suffering. But then you wake up the next day or the next day or the next day, and life has presented the answers to your problems. But meantime, we've got to get through this turbulence. It's not actually the challenge. It's not actually the person. It's not actually the circumstance that's causing the suffering or the despair. It's our response to it. But the response is real, and it hurts, and it's intense. And that's why we need the tools. So today, we're going to be looking at the second tool of A.T.L.A.S, which is thoughts and feelings. Now, again, a question that I pose to people is, how do you decide which thoughts and feelings you pay attention to and which ones you ignore? And I'm going to present this to you now. Just ask yourself that question. Just think about, how do I actually decide which thoughts and feelings I pay attention to and which ones I ignore? I can tell you that in my experience, 98% of people do not have that mechanism in place. They do not have a method of deciding which thoughts and feelings to pay attention to and which ones to ignore. We have about, 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day. It's not possible that we are paying attention to all of them. So there is some sort of filter in place. But guess where the filter is? It's subconscious. We're not aware of it. So we're just accepting all these thoughts and feelings. And virtually all psychological suffering, so psychological meaning not physical suffering, is a result of our entanglement with these thoughts and feelings. If you think about it, desire, regret, fear, defense, all of these are thoughts. And by not noticing, we get attached to them. And this is where the first tool, the awareness anchor, is very good, because it just starts to allow us to create distance. It's a place that we can go to where we can observe the thoughts and we can realize that they're transient, that they pass, that they're not permanent. And then from that place, at this point within the awareness anchor, we haven't actually tried to do anything with the thoughts and feelings. We're just observing them, no resistance, let them come, thank them, and then let them go. But what we're going to do now with this tool of the curiosity compass is we're going to start to run them through a process. And this curiosity compass is a tool that will give you a method of deciding which thoughts and feelings you're going to pay attention to and which ones you're going to ignore. Okay. Let's just make sure everyone's all right. Yeah, we're all good. So what we're going to learn today is we're going to get to the root of unhealthy habits. We're going to look at the role of feelings. We're going to learn how to use the curiosity compass to respond rather than act. And we're going to learn some simple techniques to reduce the emotional charge and escape the rumination loop. So the root of unhealthy habits. Habits are formed because we are seeking comfort from discomfort. It's kind of that simple. If you remember those five biological wiring that we have, one of them is a low tolerance for discomfort. And this is one of those subconscious, non-conscious biological instincts. And from an evolutionary point of view, it was actually crucial for the survival of the species. But for us, it's out of balance. We default to pleasure over pain. And this is why exercising can be so difficult because it's actually uncomfortable. We have discomfort and we have pain. And the problem is we're not rationalizing short-term pleasure over long-term gain. So we find comfort from discomfort in the form of unhealthy food, alcohol, drugs, porn, video games, shopping, etc., etc. I mentioned to you before that I've worked a lot with people on this, dependencies and addiction to drugs, alcohol, food. And it's never about the unhealthy food, the alcohol, the drugs. That's the comfort that they're seeking from the discomfort. So it's important for long-term change that we look at what is the discomfort that you're finding comfort from. So when we start to bring awareness to this, that it's not about the comfort, it's about the discomfort, then we can start to really appreciate the power of its influence. And this is a total game changer. So one of the biggest discomforts that we have is boredom. And when you think about it, actually living healthy, eating raw foods, exercising, going to bed early, not drinking alcohol, can get a bit boring, right? But that's life. So one of the biggest skills that we can learn is to be good at boredom. The awareness anchor helps that because it can center you back. It can take you back home. But anyway, boredom is, especially in this modern day, a big challenge. It's a modern challenge in a hyper-stimulated world because our tolerance for boredom is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because we're so there's so much hyper stimulation around us. Now that we can get the answer to any question within seconds, we have access to all kind of entertainment at our fingertips. We can get any food we desire delivered within the hour in most places. We can do same day or next day shopping. There's literally no limit to the solutions available to us to end this discomfort from boredom. And most of them are unhealthy and destructive. So I actually play with boredom. I recognize when I'm bored and I play with it and I invite it and I sit with it and I increase my tolerance for boredom so that I'm not reaching for those comforts. I shared with you, I don't know how many of you have watched the Game Changers from last year, but do you remember that study that I said was in Science Daily, where participants were asked to sit in a room for 15 minutes with nothing but their thoughts? The room was completely empty except for a device that they could use to mildly but painfully electrocute themselves. Prior to entering the room, the participants said that they would actually pay not to be shocked. However, left alone, just with their own thoughts, 67% of men and 25% of women electrocuted themselves. Not till death, but the study concluded that people prefer doing to thinking and being alone and bored, even if the alternative is normally they would pay to avoid it. So that was a very interesting study. Okay. So the important message here is anything that relieves discomfort is potentially addictive. And if we have time at the end of this, I'll tell you a story, but I don't want to do it now because I don't want to use up too much time, but I have a story planned for this that I might share. But yeah. Okay, now it's very important. I'm starting to prepare you for this tool, the Curiosity Compass. So there's just a few things that I think is really important to bear in mind because I often get questions about this. So first of all, I would like to talk about feelings. So I call feelings rebels of the heart. They're faithful messengers rising in response to the mind's misguided perceptions and mental constructs. Honor them, but don't let them define you. So we're going to learn to distinguish between useful and unuseful feelings. And again, in Game Changers, if you remember, we actually used feelings for habit change, because feelings, what we feel, directly influences the reward value that our OFC, our orbital frontal cortex, applies to habits. So feelings are really important. Feelings are really important for visioning. You know, when you have your life vision, you have to feel yourself there. So they're very, very important. And we're actually going to be delving into more of that next week. But for now, I just want us to remember that they do deserve our attention. They can reveal truths about what's stirring beneath the surface, our unmet needs that are outside of our awareness. They are real, feelings are real, but they're often not entirely truthful. So we're going to look more at that. I would also like to talk about the illusion of sunny skies. So when trapped in negative thoughts, replacing them with positive ones often proves ineffective. Our biological wiring for negativity, which you'll remember from last week, is a survival mechanism honed through human history. It's very, very powerful, and it makes positive thinking alone insufficient. Positive thinking takes place in the conscious mind, but as we know, the conscious mind is not as powerful. And our negativity about ourselves, about circumstances, our catastrophizing, it all takes place in the subconscious. So just positive thoughts and affirmations, not enough. I've made a note here, subconsciously. Yeah, I mean, this is why we need to work with the subconscious to change the beliefs, not the positive thinking at the cognitive level, because it's the beliefs that live in the subconscious. Next, okay, good. Knowing when to listen. So not all feelings need to be dismissed. There are some emotions like grief, sadness, or fear that are entirely valid responses to real life situations. In these cases, the goal is not to push away or fix the feeling, but rather to allow yourself to feel it fully without judgment. However, what we're going to learn today is we need to be able to notice when these valid emotions turn into unhelpful rumination. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. So rumination, I call it the rumination loop. So unhelpful thoughts. If we have unhelpful thoughts and feelings, these often create significant discomfort, driving much of our desire for immediate relief or comfort. Feelings of regret, sadness, fear, worry, and anger dominate the rumination loop. But like I said, fortunately, I have a very powerful tool that is designed to break this rumination loop and get you out of it. It will diminish the emotional intensity of the unhelpful pattern of this rumination loop. So the tool is called the Curiosity Compass. And this tool is intended for use when you need it. So when you feel yourself overwhelmed or ruminating with unwanted thoughts or feelings, this is when you use this tool. It's also very good. It's a very good tool to bring awareness to the thoughts and feelings that are driving your habits. The reason why I have used curiosity is by engaging in curiosity, you'll experience an immediate reduction in the emotional charge of problematic thoughts and feelings. And this is why, again, this will immediately change your state of mind. And when practiced, when you can get good at this, it comes naturally to analyze the thoughts and feelings. It's nearly impossible to hold on to anger, sadness, regret, or worry while actively engaging your curiosity. They cannot compete. Then, with the emotional charge reduced, we can run our thoughts and feelings through a series of questions to establish whether they are helpful or unhelpful. This process is valuable because when you're caught in a rumination loop, we often lack clarity. But with a fresh perspective, we can then decide what action can be taken. So, I want to have a practice with you. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through, because I have it. This is what I use in live workshops. So, you can actually have your eyes closed for this and you can just hear my voice and think about it. Or you might want to write some notes down. It's really up to you. You can sit comfortably and take just a couple of nice deep breaths and bring to mind a thought with a negative emotional attachment. Now, identify the emotion that's associated with this thought or scenario. Is it sadness, frustration, regret, anger, or guilt? Notice that you can observe this emotion. If you can observe the emotion, you are not the emotion itself. Recognize that you brought this thought and this emotion here. Isn't that interesting? 5 minutes ago, I doubt that you would have had that thought or emotion. Observe how engaging your curiosity to the thought and the emotion has already begun to reduce the thought's power. Now we're going to run this thought or feeling through a validation process. Ask yourself, is this thought or feeling valid? Valid thoughts often lead to action or problem solving. Ask yourself, how do I know it's really true? Is it grounded in reality or driven by fear, speculation, or what ifs? What actual evidence do I have to support it? Ask yourself, do I have verifiable facts or experiences, not assumptions, stories, or hypothetical scenarios? Now let's take a look. Is the thought valid and actionable? If the thought is valid, but you can't take action or find a resolution, it's not serving you. It's not helpful. Let it go. If the thought isn't valid and you found it's driven by fear, speculation, or what ifs, it's not helpful. Let it go. If the thought is valid and you can take action, it's helpful, it's time to act. So ask yourself, is the thought helpful? Or are you looping back into rumination? If you can take action, do something immediately, even if it's just planning. Sometimes you can't actually take the action, but you can certainly plan it, you can visualize it, and you can work out your next steps. Visualize your positive action if you cannot do anything right away. This takes you out of the rumination loop. This changes your story and it evokes the power of momentum. It's very, very important. If you can take action, do it immediately and move on. If you've decided that the thought is not valid and it's not actionable, or if you've decided that it's valid, but it's in a rumination loop and therefore not actionable, it's time to let it go. Visualize it as a ball that you can mold in your hands. Wrap it securely in foil or newspaper. And then with your strongest arm, imagine throwing it far, far away into an ocean or a deep ravine. Watch it disappear from view. You may even see the splash of water as it hits the ocean. With the thought gone, it's time to move on. Shake your body, your arms, your shoulders, and your torso to release the tension. Take a deep breath and bring into mind, flood yourself with 5 things that you're grateful for. And they can be really simple, like your breath, cup of tea, hot bath, blue sky, a loved one. It's time to breathe deeply and remind yourself that you are not your thoughts and feelings. You are free. Okay, now that I have familiarized you with that, you can just slowly open your eyes. Maybe wiggle your fingers and your toes and come back. Okay. Do we have everyone back? Okay. Do you want to put in the chat? Does anyone have any questions about that tool? Okay, yes. I'm going to record with this because it's something that you kind of need to be alone and working with. And that's why I wanted to have a little chat with it about it. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll run through the rest of the slides. I've only got a couple of slides left anyway. And then we can have a chat because there's maybe a few things we need to clear up there. Okay. So what we have just learned is we got to the roots of unhealthy habits. We're looking for comfort from discomfort. And boredom is one of our biggest discomforts. So if we can practice being bored and being really okay with bored, and accept discomfort, that will go a long, long, long way to solving all the bad habits. And also remember that, yeah, like life can be boring and that's fine. It's good. I introduced you to the curiosity compass. Now, it's very, very powerful. And like I said, the more you practice it, the more you understand it, the more you really start running thoughts through this. This is the mechanism that will differentiate between the healthy ones and the unhealthy. What's valid and what are you catastrophizing? What's a story that you've made up? Let me see if I can tell you this one. I kind of maybe want it not in the recording, so I'll come back to it after I finish the recording. Okay, we also looked at, so the curiosity compass allows us to respond rather than react. And then we had simple techniques to reduce the emotional charge, which is curiosity, and escape that rumination loop. So I mentioned again that, this is also really important, and I use this a lot. Life will present the answers to your problems, and if you just kind of like play with this maybe until I see you next time, and just observe how often this is true. It's true all the time. This too will pass. There is universal consciousness presents the answers to our problems. That's what I believe. And the more we trust it, the more we believe that, the more the answers will come. But meanwhile, yes, we need tools. Okay, so then, in case you didn't write it down, I would love to see you on Instagram if you have Instagram, or you can get in touch with me. I have had 2 people actually message me through the Lifebook portal, saying that they would like to speak to me, and whether or not I can help them. I offer a 20-minute discovery call if you want to book in with me and we can have a chat. I'm not saying that I'll be able to be your therapist, but I could certainly, we'll have a chat and I can point you to some resources. There's so many good resources out there now, but I might be able to just listen to what you're struggling with and point you in a direction. So take advantage of that. I don't have the link on me right now, but maybe I could put it. How can I put it? I'll put it on the posting when I put the recording up. It's a calendar appointment that you can book, a 20-minute call. Okay. I'm going to stop the sharing so that I can have a chat with you. So yeah, it's kind of about really digging into the story and finding out where's the story come from. You could think it's valid because, however, it could be based on a belief that is not true. So that's also where we come back to questioning the beliefs. What is that? So the thought is valid, but it's based on a belief that may not be true. Where did the belief come from? Yeah. And if that's the case, then compartmentalization, rather than throwing it in the ocean, you could maybe visualize putting it in a box, put it in a box and maybe file it away. So it's not gone forever, but you can revisit, put it in a box. And these techniques are actually from NLP. So you would take that, you would say, right, this is valid, but right now I can't do anything about it. So that's why you're going back into the rumination loop. But I may be able to do something about it in the future, and I would like to revisit it, but I don't want to suffer until I can revisit it. So I'm going to, put it in an envelope, and I'm going to put it in a box. And all this you're visualizing, put it in a box and you put it in a cupboard and you just leave it there. And I'm going to come back to it. But for now, it's there and I'm moving on. Yep.
Yeah. And I can open the lid and maybe put something more in there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've had people put people in boxes.
That's nice.
Cupboard full of them. Yeah.
Thank you, Jo.
Yeah. Yes.
Very useful.
Yeah. And I find also these things, they I think this tool in particular gives us permission slips to do that with things and people and circumstances. Because sometimes you hold on to things because you think, no, I can't let go. I don't want to let go. Sometimes we find comfort in the rumination loop, but it's not healthy.